today and sharing this nice day when you could be outside having fun here and inside, listening to strategies for dealing with state repression here in Providence, in Rhode Island, in the South Coast, Massachusetts, in the Bedford Fall River area. We have an amazing panel for you all today. And I want to start by introducing Karen Lauer, who is a student at Roger Williams Law School right across the street, and she is going to be moderating the panel. So on behalf of the National Lawyers Guild, FANG, Coyote Rhode Island, DARE, PRISM, Sierra Club Rhode Island, am I forgetting anyone? All our wonderful co-sponsors, and of course, AS220, who's hosting this. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much for the panelists, and for you guys, I am as excited as all of you, I'm sure, to know the project. So as far as the event, we're just gonna, Ben and the panelists are just gonna answer some quick questions, but then we're gonna open the panel for you guys to ask your questions. So first, we're gonna start with John, and I'm sure at least with two. So the first question is, what should activists expect if they are arrested in Providence or anywhere in Rhode Island, and how going on with that, how can people post bail for them? If somebody hears that they have a warrant out for their arrest, how can they take care of that? What are the steps?
Can everybody hear me? You might want to do
Oh yeah. Sorry.
Can everybody hear me now? Good. My name is John Kawash, and I work in the Public Defender's Office in Rhode Island, out of King County currently. So there's sort of a lot going on in that question, so I'll just give it a quick overview, and then if anybody has specific questions they want to answer, we can get that done. So when you're arrested in Rhode Island, they'll bring you back to the police station. First of all, just don't talk to the police. Just don't. They're gonna try to get you to make statements. Don't do it. It's not gonna help you, regardless of how much they tell you. It's gonna help you. Just get arrested. Be cooperative. Get back there. Eventually, depending on the charge, either a justice of the peace or somebody will come and set bail at the police station. You can post the bail at the police station and be released with a summons to appear in court. So basically what that is you go to the police station, they book you, they tell you your charges, you post the bail at the police station, and you're released within your court date to go to court. The other thing that could happen is they could just hold you pending the next arraignment session in court. So the way that works is you get arrested, go back to the police station, book you, they put you in a cell for however long, and then you get brought to court to the arraignment session, where you go before a judge, you enter a plea, hopefully of not guilty, so then you are able to begin the fight of your case. Bail will be set at that point. Bail can be posted at the courthouse, and bail can be posted at the ACI if you're unable to post it at the courthouse. And the ACI is the Rhode Island Bail, for those of you that aren't aware of that. So that's just like a very quick overview of how that stuff works. If you post bail at the ACI, there's like additional fees, right? So there's a lot of this like little technical things that could change depending on where bail is posted, or if you're given a summons to appear in court and all that. Do you want to?
There are a couple things. One is, I'm Alison Clay, by the way, private attorney in Rhode Island. You do have a right in Rhode Island to request a phone call to arrange for bail within an hour of your arrest. It is by statute. Doesn't happen, but it is. And if you are in part of an action with the Lawyers Guild involved, we do our best to try to get a bail bondsman up there to get you out so you're not held overnight. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not. But you do have a right to ask. Say, I have money for bail. If you tell an officer, I have money to get out, I want to get out, can I call someone? That'll be helpful for you to not be held overnight until the next court session. So it's not a weekend. They're going to have a bail bondsman come in the morning generally anyway. But if you want to get out quicker, it's, you got to be vocal. You got to say I have a lawyer. If you know the number, have a number from the outside. Say I have someone that can come and get me. And let them know that you want to be released and you have the money to do it. Because if they do have a JP come out to the station, it's $50 during the day to pay the JP. You don't get that money back. Plus whatever security they're going to want from you to make sure you come back to court. Usually it's personal recognizances, but not always. So sometimes you have to put $100, $500 out front and then get that back when the case is done. If it's after 11 o'clock, it's a $200 fee just for the JP to come and bail you out, so you don't get that money back either.
My name is Lee Poom from Providence, but I work in Massachusetts, so I can talk a little bit about what would happen if you got arrested in Massachusetts. If you're arrested, there is a clerk magistrate, which is the equivalent of a justice of the peace in Rhode Island. They first can set bail, and usually if you have no record, no reason that they would think that you wouldn't show up to court, they'll release you on your own personal recognizance. For Massachusetts, if it's out of court, that clerk magistrate makes $40. That $40 is on top of whatever bail is set. You don't get that back. If you're taken to court and bail is set by the judge, it's just what the bail is set, and there's no additional fee that's kept. So you get whatever you get, what you post at the court back. What else did you want to say?
Just about the warrant, like if you hear that a warrant is out for your arrest, and also we're planning on it, but you know.
So let's say we're not aware, and we find out later on that there's a warrant, you don't know what type of warrant. In Massachusetts, all warrants are cleared in court. Unlike Rhode Island, I think some of these Rhode Island attorneys can talk a little bit about that. But if you find out, or you think you might have a warrant, contact one of us or contact an attorney. We can call the courthouse that's, takes care of cases out of whatever police station it is, and we can determine just with your name and date of birth if there's a warrant, and then we can arrange for a day for you to go in and clear it with an attorney. You might be able to do it on your own, but it's, I think, better to go in with an attorney or someone you're familiar with. We could go in and clear it, and then pick a new court date from there. I know Rhode Island's a little different about that. Do you have some experience?
I do want to talk about warrants.
So unlike Massachusetts, you can't clear all warrants in the courthouse here in Rhode Island. So there's two different kinds of warrants really. So if you have just an arrest warrant, so a new charge that you haven't been actually arrested on, you actually have to turn yourself into the police station in order to clear that arrest warrant. So you turn yourself into the police station, they book you, and then you go through the whole court process at that point. You can't just go to the clerk's office and turn yourself in on an arrest warrant, say from that Providence Police has issued for you. You actually have to go to the police station. And we think Ben, I don't know where he is, but we talked about this a little earlier, so I'll mention it. If you do find out that you have an arrest warrant out of a police station, try to get there early in the morning, like 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, and the reason is that way you can make it to the morning session for arraignment. If you turn yourself in or get arrested on that warrant, like say 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, you may make it to the afternoon session, which begins at 2 p.m. You may not. It just depends on how quickly the police department is functioning on that day. So if you get arrested at 10 a.m. and you're not able to get arraigned that day in court, and they're not setting bail for whatever reason at the police station, you're going to get held overnight at the police station until you're brought into court to face a judge. So if you are aware or suspect that you may have a warrant, it's probably best to just go to that police station early in the morning and turn yourself in on that. That way you can make the first arraignment session and get out of there as soon as possible.
Thank you for that. Our next question is about what does it mean to be an activist? And this question is mainly for, is it Allison?
I'm
Oh,
Sherry.
Sherry, sorry.
But
Okay.
I also would like to answer that question of what is it like to get arrested, because it's very different from the lawyer's perspective as opposed to the activist perspective. Is it okay if I go back to that question? So you heard from a couple, 3 lawyers about what that arrest process is like from this technical perspective of how things should go. And there are folks in this room who are organizers and activists who've also been arrested doing direct actions. And so just want to acknowledge their presence in this space and that we all have had different experiences and will speak for my own. And as a person who's provided jail support for those people who've been arrested. When we've been arrested, or I personally have been arrested in Rhode Island and in Massachusetts and in other places, when you are arrested, you will be either handcuffed or zip tied, and both of which cause severe nerve damage to your wrists. You also can potentially be foot shackled, and a lot of people think that you are not allowed to be foot shackled, but I have been foot shackled multiple times. And so I just want to acknowledge that that is a type of harm that could happen to your body, and you will be held uncomfortably in a car. And I'm not saying these things to scare you, I'm saying these things to help you understand that this is a reality, and that if you are an quote-unquote activist who is choosing to risk arrest, you are choosing to experience these harms. And that is fucked up, and that hurts. But we also need to acknowledge that there are people in our communities who go through this experience without choosing to be arrested, right? And so our choice to get arrested is a privilege. So I just want to say that right now. And so you will be uncomfortably held in a vehicle and transported. And sometimes there's air conditioning and sometimes there is not. And that is on a time when a police officer will try to get a lot of information out of you because you're shaken and you're afraid, and they're going to ask you, how many times have you done this? Do not talk to them. Do not answer their questions. Invoke your right to remain silent right away. And I know it's really difficult to say, I invoke my right to remain silent, but you need to. And you need to practice doing it. I don't care if you practice right now while I'm talking. Just keep saying it to yourself because it's really important. Then you're going to go to jail and you will be put in a holding cell. You will be told that there will be water, and you will be told that you will have access to food. Oftentimes this is not true. You will not have food and you will not have water, and you could be held there for a very long time. And it's really uncomfortable. One time I was put in a cell where there was a heated concrete slate. I didn't understand why it was heated, and so I didn't touch it for a really long time, but embraced the heated slate because it is very cold in jail. They want you to be uncomfortable. If you're choosing to risk arrest, I would recommend wearing a sweater. Yeah, and then you will probably not get a phone call for a really long time. There's been many times where I've been arrested and I have not been given a phone call at all. A lot of times, white people I've been arrested with will get a phone call, and I will not. If they notice that we all have the same phone number on our bodies, we will not all get a phone call. So make sure you hide that jail support number, right? Or try to memorize it, because if they recognize that you were all calling the same number, they will only let the white people call. That's what has happened in Rhode Island and has happened to us in Massachusetts. Oftentimes, if you have tattoos, they will take pictures of them, and that's really uncomfortable because they want to see if you've committed other crimes and they want to know if you're in a gang. And yeah, you're just not, like, this whole process is dehumanizing and demoralizing, and it's created that way for a reason. And another thing I want to say is when you are put into a cell with other people who did not choose to be there, you are not better than them. They are your community. They are the reason why we do this work. And so it is our responsibility to take care of them when we're there. So if you know you're going to get bonded and bailed out because you have a team of people supporting you, then you need to bond and bail out the people you're in that cell with. You need to figure it out. So just remember that. Yeah, so I just want to say that, and I can also talk more about what that arrest process has been like for me, but oftentimes have not been given a phone call. As a person who's done jail support, I've been definitely jerked around by the police officers there, being told that, like, I personally have to call the justice of the peace. You cannot, unless you are a lawyer. And so just also understanding that the police can lie to you, and they will tell you that you need to tell them specific things in order to get out. And I am telling you this, not as a lawyer, I'm telling you this as a person who's gone through this, that they will lie to you, they are allowed to lie to you. And they will say, you need to tell me this specific information or you're gonna be here all night. But luckily for you, if you're choosing to do this with a team, you know there's a team of people working to try to get out. So, you know, just ask for a lawyer right away.
And as a follow-up to that, so how was it like for you, Sherry, to work with lawyers in a criminal case?
We were talking about this earlier, because I'm not a lawyer, but many lawyers. We work, FANG, I'm one of the co-founders of the FANG Collective, which is a group here in Rhode Island that has predominantly done environmental work, fighting frack gas infrastructure projects along the East Coast, as well as currently has an anti-deportation campaign called Shut Down ICE. And it has been really nice to work with National Lawyers Guild lawyers because they understand why we're doing this work and they want to support us. But that does not mean it hasn't been tricky sometimes. A couple of things that have been a little difficult is if you are working with a lawyer who does not recognize that you do not want to accept what might be a good deal. So a good deal is great, you did a great job, you're a good lawyer, I really appreciate it, but I'm not fucking paying restitution. I'm not going to do that. And so if that means I'm going to go to jail, that seems bad. But in terms of my values, and I'm not saying that you should not pay restitution, I think people have different conditions, different identities that make it unsafe for them to be in jail, and I think that you should do what feels good for you, but I don't want to. And sometimes that can cause tension between myself and my lawyer because they don't understand that that's something I don't want to do. And also understanding that court cases can be part of a long-term plan in terms of a campaign. And so this has often been the case with FANG, I might be the person who was arrested at the beginning of a campaign. Both of our environmental campaigns and our anti-deportation campaign, I'm going to be setting a precedent for everyone else who takes action within that campaign. So if I pay restitution right from the beginning, I'm setting the precedent that they can try to charge everybody else who's risked restitution. Or give them shitty deals and that they might accept it. And I personally don't want to do that. And so, but it's been really nice working with lawyers from National Lawyers Guild because they also meet with us, they meet with our family members, and they work with us as organizers. A couple of things that they do is recognize that we're not stupid because we go through this process all of the time, and oftentimes we know what we're going to be charged with. We are the ones who are organizing around getting our own bail and bond. And the other thing is, not everyone, because there's been a couple of national legals that they're not shocked when the system fucks us over. There's been lawyers who've been very shocked, like, oh, I didn't think that was going to happen. Well, you would have known that was going to happen because I told you that is exactly what was going to happen right before we walked into that courtroom. I told you they weren't going to accept whatever it is. So that's happened a lot. So I think having lawyers who want to understand that this is part of a longer term strategy is really beneficial and supportive, and also uplift our organizing skills and abilities, and recognizing that we have researchers. We have people who can do all the tactical work and utilize our team as if they were just working within their own law office.
Thank you. You're an activist.
I think we all activists up here now, just in different areas. But just listening to some of the responses so far, I know all of us are in here because we see ourselves in a struggle. So you really have to think in terms of when you're going up against the state, possibility of getting arrested, possibility of getting beat up, all those things, and like Sherry said, the trauma, which I think is the thing for me to focus on, coming from an activist perspective. You're going up against the system, expect your body, your being to be traumatized. You need to have support for that from your, the folks that are doing the stuff on the outside. But those, if it's a group, you need to know how to give that to everybody inside, whether you're inside that jail van taking you to the jail, or whether you're in the cell. Know that some folks is traumatized. Don't come up with the macho stuff like we all want to put on that tough front. Make sure that people is okay. Make sure that they know it's okay. You can break down and cry right there. Get it out right now. We're here. You know, because it is a long-term struggle. We want to bring this thing down. The legal front, you know, y'all are activists. I mean, you too. You know, as much as me, I'm honored to be up here with you. You know, because when that happens, you're on that, on point trying to get work done. And it's an education for you as well as it is for us. You know, you're going to make some decisions and you're going to get surprised, as you say. There's your lesson. Try to learn from that for the next time. It is a struggle. You know, you know, being that I'm all up in my 60s now, you know, I've had to, been fortunate enough to have been around some really great lawyers, revolutionaries, you know, and they all understood, you know, what we were trying to do from our side. You know, there's some that's still in prison, that's 40-something years. And when you talk about if you got a warrant for your arrest, some of them was like, well, I ain't gonna be there. I'm going underground. You know, and that might be the last time you see them, or maybe 5, 10, 20 years later. You know, there's all kinds of situations for those who envision that better world that we're fighting for that you're gonna have to confront and deal with. Don't be naive about it. Know that this system hurts and is designed to hurt anyone that will oppose it from all kinds of different, you know, levels or dimensions. The psychic part can be the most damaging of all. The lawyer may not be able to help you too much with that. You know, your comrades were with you, maybe. But it may mean you need to reorient what you educate yourself on, what you train yourself on, you know, so that the lawyers can do their thing, so that they can, like, you know, be that William Kunstler in that courtroom, you know, be those type of attorneys who was not afraid of the judge with the black suit on and the, you know, stuff like that, the authoritarian scenery. Be ready to engage because you're here for clients, and that your client activist does have the last word, but your client activist should also listen as well as just give out what you want done. It's a tough situation. It's a struggle. Every aspect that you think of, it's a struggle because we want to change this thing. So I mean, like, I'm not going to be long on that, but to really understand, like, hey, it's tough. It's long term. You need to have some things going on for you that helps you on that psychic level, that spiritual level even, you know, so that when you meeting up with this monster, you've got some things in your toolkit that can help you, you know, so that you just don't totally break down. But if you see yourself breaking down, do not be the macho one who tells no one, who shares it with no one. Ask for help. That's what this struggle is about. Ask for help. You know, you got it. You know, so just on that, so I don't have to, you know, because collectively I know we can do this.
And just to follow just on you as well, Ashanti, can you describe just a little bit of what made you join the Black Panther Party, and also what are the most important lessons you can draw from law enforcement repression against the Black Panther Party? I know it's a little
introduction, because I'm not sure everyone knows who you are.
My name is Ashanti Alston. I'm a former member of the Black Panther Party and a soldier in the Black Liberation Army. The difference between the two is when we went underground, we went into the ranks of the Black Liberation Army. There was shootouts, there was bank expropriation, there was kidnappings of drug dealers, there was all kinds of stuff. We were engaged in war. So I was a part of that. As a young, starting off as a young teenager, Plainfield, New Jersey. In the course of all that, getting captured, doing a total of 14 years in prison. But I've been out now for, I don't know, a couple of decades at least. I'm an at-home dad. Tough job, tough revolutionary job. But as important as those who are on the legal front, right? And so now most of that do is around bringing awareness around the political prisoners who are still in. Like I said, some for over 40 years, maybe a couple of 50 years, trying to still get our comrades out from them days where some of us really believed that we had to do what was ever necessary to make this revolution here happen.
Well, again, at this point, I can open it up. I'm not sure if you guys want to address anything specifically. If not, we can open it for questions for the public.
Yeah, no, I am capable of speaking. My name is Jim Vega. I practice in New Bedford. Been representing some of the folks from FANG on their anti-immigration work. So what I want to say, I think, is maybe directed at attorneys who will or are or have been representing movements or groups who are doing that work. First thing I want to say is be prepared to cede a little bit of that control that attorneys really like to have, and that the sort of the rules of professional responsibility say that is sort of that those strategy decisions, a lot of those things that we're taught to believe are our decisions. Let the folks that you're representing make those decisions, and that doesn't mean don't advise your clients on the consequences of things, but work towards their goals and listen to what their goals are, and work with court support teams. A lot of the folks that you might represent have a lot of people that are supporting them and are willing to put in a lot of work and a lot of time helping the case, helping your particular clients, helping get people to court, helping with jail support. So be really willing and open to working with all of those people, because it can be a really big help. And again, you're not just representing the person in that case. I think you are in a real sense representing that entire organization, that entire group. So just keep that in mind. And again, be mindful of the goals of your clients. If you are, I think it's just thinking about representing folks in Bristol County, Massachusetts, where I practice. One thing I think I've learned is that although as lawyers we feel like we're comfortable in the courtroom and that the courtroom is our sort of domain, doing this representing political defendants, doing this kind of work, the courtroom is not really our ideal battlefield. Like, you have to go into it, I think, think about it like this. Every single person in that courtroom, other than you and your client and their support, are enemies. The prosecutor, obviously, is the enemy. That's an easy one. Judge, enemy. Court officers, enemies. Court staff, enemies. It is hostile terrain. Things that you thought you were going to be able to do, or ways of resolving a case, cooperation that you might normally have with a prosecutor, or a relationship you might have with a particular judge that you think is going to be beneficial. No. Don't count on it. So, that's, again, for the lawyers, right? I would say for folks who are going to be, maybe doing the work and taking those risks, maybe, certainly in Bristol County and New Bedford, they're going to try to put you in jail for as long as they can. And I mean the judges are. they absolutely have a political sort of goal and a political end in mind. So just sort of be prepared for that. And it can be a long process to fight a case in Massachusetts. Massachusetts courts move slowly. Maybe 2 months in between court dates. So just it might be a really long process. So, I think that's.
And I think one thing to note in terms of, because we didn't really get to talk about ourselves or why we're here or why we're up here a whole lot, but yeah, who we are. I think just one reason why there's folks also from Massachusetts here is that they do represent people from Massachusetts and Rhode Island, and people might risk arrest in Massachusetts. And I personally was arrested in Massachusetts, and some folks in here were arrested in Massachusetts for fighting prisons that have 287G agreements, which are contracts with ICE that allow those prisons to essentially become detention facilities. And in Rhode Island, folks are getting arrested here and then detained in Massachusetts. And that's why FANG has a campaign against prisons that have 287G agreements. And so people are in this room who are doing anti-deportation work and are considering continuing that work of targeting prisons that have these 287G agreements or IJSA agreements, which is a little different. You would probably be working with these folks in Massachusetts that want to acknowledge that that's happening and why Jim's my lawyer and why not. I don't have a Rhode Island lawyer.
And if I could just add a little bit to what Jim was saying, I think it's important for us to recognize that we're all here, we all believe in this fight, but once you get in that courtroom, we are the antithesis of what these judges expect their system to be like, right? So we all believe in this work and fighting against deportation, fighting against these ICE facilities. But to them, it's like, oh, you're blocking a facility, you're blocking hospitals from getting wherever on this main street. There are legal means to address your concern. You're not going to get in the way of the system working the way it is. And if you are, you're going to pay the consequences. So in some situations, maybe you can get a prosecutor who thinks they're liberal and maybe agree with what you're doing, but ultimately in Mass, the judge is the one that's going to decide our fate, what the sentence is. You can't get around that, and they do not believe in what we do because it goes against what they stand for. And they stand for this law and order, and that all laws are great and right or just, whatever have you. So just keep that in mind, that you're not going to get a judge who's going to believe and support what we're doing.
I think that's generally the case. I gotta say there are some Rhode Island judges and prosecutors that may be more helpful, maybe not. There are streams on both sides. Most probably the best one that was on our side.
Maybe I should clarify, Bristol County.
Yeah. But either way, you should go in there and expect it's going to be a fight. And I think it's going to come up roses. Anyway.
Anyone have any questions? We're going to open it up. Yes?
Just a question on a small legal point. The pamphlet, the Know Your Rights pamphlet that you passed out said that there, depending on the state, there are sometimes legal ramifications just for refusing to give your name to a police officer. Can you speak to that for
So we were just talking about that, like as everybody was filing in, and I guess Allison and I can probably talk about that and then give it up to the other people from Massachusetts. If a police officer asks your name, I think we were sort of under the impression that like you're not under any obligation to give it to them. However, be expected that you're going to get arrested for like obstruction of justice or something like that. And this is Allison's point, and I don't want to take any credit for it, but there's a difference between being arrested for obstruction of justice and actually not giving your name being obstruction of justice, right? So like, you may be arrested for it, but that doesn't mean that you need to give your name in the future, right? Like it doesn't mean that that charge is going to stick. Police can ask you for your name and you can sit silently. I don't know that there's much Right, and I'll let Allison add that.
There is a statute that says if they have reasonable suspicion that you're involved in a crime and they're investigating, that you're supposed to identify yourself. So that's an element that they have to prove. But again, the difference between what they'll arrest you for and what they can prove in court are two different standards.
Any other questions?
We heard about the Massachusetts.
Oh, Matt.
Yeah, Massachusetts is a little, I think even, the law I think is even a little better for us. Again, you don't have to identify yourself, you don't have to speak with the police, but if they have reasonable suspicion that you committed a crime, or even the higher standard of probable cause, then they're going to be able to ask for your identification. And what I do want to add is if you're driving, if you're the driver of a motor vehicle, they're going to, in Massachusetts, you absolutely must identify yourself. In Rhode Island, it's the same. Yeah, so that's just something to keep in mind. But in Massachusetts, it's a normal sort of, if you're pulled over for speeding or something, your passengers don't have to identify themselves, which is something to keep in mind. Yeah, does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
How do we better unite? Just to the brother, how do we better unite the prison struggle with the struggles on the street? Now, how do we bring back that 60s element, that 60s mentality, that drive for people of color that are inside into the street, and how to get the street to get on that program? To be just as radical,
I wish I had an answer for that. Because I think for the longest, we've been trying to figure out what strategies work to make prison issues, political prisoner issues, a part of community issues. I was fortunate one time to go to Ireland, and to the Anarchist Book Fair conference. But there I had a chance to go to Northern Ireland and talk with a lot of folks from the Irish Republican movement, the anarchist movement and others. And you get a sense that the Irish Republican communities know who their political prisoners are, they know what the prison issues are. You look at the murals all over the place, these beautiful murals that point to what their issues are. You can go to cemeteries and it's like this is where the IRA folks are buried, this is where the anarchists are buried, this is where the heroes are buried. And going there would make me think automatically what we don't have here. The government, FBI, and all the other forces definitely crushed our movements back then, to the point where you couldn't even talk about the Black Panther Party, you couldn't talk about the Weather Underground, you couldn't talk about the Native Indigenous movements and all that stuff here. I went in prison for the long term, was 74, got out at the end of 85. And I've told the story, other places. There was a young brother, high school, I asked him what he knew about the Black Panthers. And he asked me, was it a martial arts group? Which told me that in that time period that I was in, they had so much terrorized our communities that parents, relatives, friends dared not talk about the struggles in their communities. It dared not got passed on. And it took really tremendous efforts of others to bring the stories of the Black Panther Party, bring the stories of the Black Power movement, then bring them stories of the Black arts movements, and then trickle here and there, the first movie come out, not the one with Wakanda. I like Wakanda. But it took the Van Peebles movie And it took other efforts to like get in the communities to like remind people that there was folks who stood up. For decades, we have been trying to get the political prisoner issues into the community. People were not taken on. And one of the things that we also learned, studying now and stuff like that, it said like when the revolution fails, it's the fault of the revolutionaries. So, I mean, I think that we have not figured that out yet, how to get our communities to remember, to remember as if it is still here. And it's strange too, because now, that I read a lot in Judaism, because it's my church also, is an Israelite church. Do not picture what you saw in DC as my church. Okay. But the part about remembering, you're supposed to remember the Israelites coming out of Egypt, crossing over the Red Sea as if it is still happening to you right now. We have not been able to figure out how to make that slave ship, that bottom of that slave ship, as if we're still in the bottom, and we're still experiencing that, and we have got to move. There are so many diversions, there are so many different, George Orwell could never imagine how far they've taken this thing here. But we have not, and I'll be the first to say, I have not figured that out, but I know that we have got to be in our communities and still at least trying to have dialogues with our people in the community. It's the simplest thing. When I see groups down, I don't see a lot of like in-community dialogue. I don't care what the issue is, even if it's environmental. We have got to figure out ways to talk to each other. Just talk to. Not, so that it's a back and forth. And so that we can figure out how to share what we know with others in the community that may not have thought of that, and also be open to getting the same kind of insights from folks in the community, because we ain't the only ones thinking about how to change this madness, So it's the same thing, and I think it's a part of why for decades I've been depressed, and sometimes I'm out of it, sometimes and it's connected also with like when we were talking about trauma, if you're confronting the police and all of other things, the trauma, getting traumatized and how you're going to deal with it. How are we going to deal with the intergenerational trauma as well? It's a very important question. And it's like I would want to just help folks or be involved with folks who want to at least let's walk the streets, let's walk, because that's how we did in the Black Panther Party. We was in the communities for real. When them programs started, we was in the communities for real, talking with people, and I don't see it today. And it's going to have to be the same with whoever's getting arrested now, whatever the issues are. We've got to, can we get into churches? Can we get into schools? Can we get into community centers? Can we just hang on the corners where folks is at? Let's talk. I think that's the simplest way to start. But if we have lost the ability to talk, then maybe we should be learning some skills on how to talk again. Because we got to start somewhere that makes sense for it to be an organic thing that starts from the ground, and folks can like say, okay, I can connect with that. And be very careful that we don't buy off into like, the Bernie Sanders, or we're going to do this and that, or we're going to save America. We don't want to save America. We don't want to save it. It's got to go. Because when we think that we can save it, we will perpetuate the madness. I don't care what our best intentions are. And so just on that, I'm willing to work with anybody who wants to figure out ways to have some kind of open dialogues in the community. But I can tell you, we ain't figured it.
Can I say one more thing? Hey, I just recently got out myself, so I was inside. I was doing a lot of this work while I was inside, so I lived with the beast in there as well. So I got to see what it was face to face, and a lot of my issues stem from reaching the youngest, like you just said, like trying to pull their mind out of the gutter. and a lot of them didn't get it until maybe there was some type of physical trauma, physical, awakening. You got the enemy oppressor with his boot on your neck. He's calling you all kinds of niggas. This is going to be for the rest of your life. Some of them are going to be there for the rest of their life, but at the same time, they don't have to be a part of that killing machine. And I mean by that is, having that mentality of black on black, black on brown, gang related, however it is, but it's all self-destructive. When I noticed that that when Conscious Brothers came through and started elevating minds, that the state's power started putting their foot on them a lot more. Agitators or using gang leaders, anything to label them everything that it was, that it was not. So what I'm going to ask you now is, how do we reach those brothers in there, and maybe like get them on the program as well as to what's out here, because a lot of them are telling me, Ari, I'm not hearing FANG, I'm not hearing DARE, I'm not hearing these organizations. What the fuck are they doing for me? I'm in here and I got these pigs with their neck on with their foot on my neck. I'm going through this type of oppression. I'm going through mental health issues. I'm in the box, inside the box, inside the box. You know what I mean? So a lot of them don't want to get involved, because it's like if they get involved, they ain't getting nothing out of it. Right, there's support. Right, so how do we get the peoples out here to get more active with the peoples in there without having to think, this is just a pen pal thing, I'm trying to get in your pants mentality. You get what I'm saying? Because I'm locked down, first thing I might want to get is a little love and affection. That's the mentality. That's not always what's real. But that's what's being put out there. So, like you said, the battle is on many fronts. I'm just wondering how we're going to do it culturally.
Well, the cultural, and again, I don't have the answer, but I can tell you that the cultural piece is really important, because we have to figure out what actually can reach those brothers inside and those sisters inside. Because I talked to a brother just by chance maybe 3 months ago in the park, and he was telling me how him and others was trying to do something for the women prisoners who get no visits. When the visits come, the men get all the visits. Very few will come and see the women. And he was like, we need to do something about that. And I'm like, yo man, I would sit down with you on that. And I do have to say, one of the few times I gave my name, email, I ain't heard nothing yet. Maybe I just got to check that email somewhere. But because I know the issue is important, it's important to me. And especially because I know the women don't get anything.
You get nothing cultural, nothing to put.
We need to figure it out. So what I'm going to tell you is that we need to figure that out. And there's going to be legal issues around there too. So it's not, it is the cultural piece, but the legal issues of what actually probably got them in there for not knowing a lot of the legal stuff and whatnot. But it's how they are killing us. It's how they are destroying the fabric of our community, whatever institution remained that held us together. Church ain't that main one no more, though I still think that there's potential for whether it's the churches, the masjids, the synagogues, whatever it is, to play a part. I think it's still possible, But if we don't figure out something more holistic, we go down. We go down, And so, I don't even know what more to say on it, but we can sit down on that. And if anyone else is interested, because I feel like for me, the most I can give is the things that I've been through, the things that I have come to understand about this system, and some things that may work, and then to be open to what's some new ideas on some things that may work. But that's how I see the situation now. It's so bad. I have never seen anything like this before. And in terms of, even if you just talk about presidents, I've been through the Nixon thing and all like that. There ain't nothing been as bad as this. And it scares me, But when I'm scared, I'm ready to go. You know, I can't shrink back, I'm ready to go. So to be able to get out more, and a lot of people may be in that situation, like, I don't know what to do, so, oh man, I'm just gonna sit back. But you gotta at least dare to take a step out of that comfort zone and like meet with some folks who maybe share your views, or maybe not. You may be the one to kind of put something out to them and say, oh yeah, let's try it. And I think those are the places where it really starts, from authentic ways.
I believe we have a question.
Yeah. First of all, thank you all for being here. This one's for Ashanti. So, kind of what you were saying before, kind of to speak off what Ari was saying about, combining and seeing the convergence between prisoner struggles and struggles on the outside. I think the prison strike last year was a good example of that, of the self-activity of prisoners to fight for what they believe in their, humanization, coordinating with people on the outside, different organizations. That's that point. But then the other point of what you're saying, which I really agreed with, and I really think about that a lot in my everyday praxis, I guess, of meeting people in the street, like, just meeting people where they're at, in their community organizations, in their churches or mosques or wherever they're at, and like being, making that sort of the mainstay of where we can build, power amongst people, like people power. And then on the opposite end of like, sometimes what I think happens, and I don't want to like be projecting or anything like that, but what tends to happen, like you said, when those movements got crushed from the 60s, there was sort of a wave, like a neoliberal wave that kind of filled that vacuum in a way that was where symbolic protest kind of took precedent over like actual base building and like building institutions that can fight against repression, whether it's ICE or the FBI, that sort of thing. And at the same time, fight repression, but also like politicize people too, and like, strengthen community institutions in that way. So I guess like, I would like to hear your reactions to the prison strike relating to what Ari was saying. And then secondly, sorry if this is a lot, but I guess could you speak on maybe like the futility of symbolic protest as a substitute for building, mass power and institutions that, that can be strong by the working class, by poor people and prisoners and that sort of thing?
Symbolic is futile, just like what you said. It's futile. Real struggle, authentic struggle that start from, the base. Those are the real struggles. And I don't want to take up a lot of time because I'm sure y'all got to have some thoughts on this, especially with the prison strike. Because again, the lawyers play key parts in that prison strike. For me, the prison strike is like, I see this layer of prisoners who are getting politicized inside the prison, and are moving towards a certain consciousness where they know they got to organize. They think the conditions is bad. I cannot even imagine some of the things that they're going through now with the years that many of my comrades spent, like in the 70s and the 80s. It's crazy. But you're human beings inside. I don't care what you're in there for. You can only take so much of this oppression. So you organize. And it was done, and I'm watching this like getting done in some really creative ways. But I'm also seeing where it is the prison administration is shutting stuff down, they're shipping out, folks who they think are the so-called ringleaders, and that's gonna traumatize and terrorize a whole bunch of others, in there. But still, they're finding ways to communicate, and I think that's very important. But again, how do the people in the communities even know about it? And then how are we trying to figure out ways for them to get involved in it? Because if the communities don't get involved in it, I ain't talking about just the black community now, but communities that understand the issues or can understand the issues, how can we stop this brutal oppression that's going down in the prisons? And as an abolitionist, I would want to strategize in a way that we ain't just looking to improve America in the prisons, but how to eventually get rid of prisons. Whether they're tied to them structures there or to the, I still say welfare and all like that, or the way that they control our community. I think it's all connected. You know, how do we get, so again, we talking about the revolutionary thoughts, you know, them thoughts that go to the very meaning of anti-authoritarian struggles. But again, can we use the radios? Can we use the social medias? To some extent. But the most important, can we get in communities to really have the discussions? If we can't, we lose. It's as simple as that. If we can't get to people in the communities, we lose. And I still feel like too much of social media. To this day, I mean, I don't even know. I'm on Facebook. I ain't used it in 5 years. I don't even know the other ones that they use now. Every time they come up with something new, I ain't even. But I love the conversations when I'm in the street or I'm in the supermarket or something. I love that back and forth with people because you might just make a connection or feel a connection that says, okay, people ain't all just buying this madness. There's hope. But we got to figure out how to reach it more. And I think too much is in the technology of social media rather than in the real stuff that was there before there was all this technology, you know. But there's going to be another round because you know that those inside are not going to stop. They got to, I don't care what they're in there for. They're human, and there's Malcolm X's in there, you know. There's others, you know, all of famous Shakur and all of them went through prison. There's so many Panthers that came away in the prisons and came out looking for the Black Panther Party. You know, we gotta be able to have stuff on the outside for them coming out. We can maybe have connection with those on the inside, and we can get stuff in, help them to get word out, so that they know that they're not alone. And again, I'm like, the lawyers play a big part, because a lot of times they got to use their skills to like get into them courts and say, hey, this is what's happening. You know, can you make some kind of ruling? You know, and if they can find the liberal one, fine. If they can't, it might be a conservative who's just like, yeah, that's fucked up. We need to do something about that. Get some of it off to give us time to be in better positions to continue on to them goals that we know that we really want. We want to bring it down. We want to bring it down so that we can create something without prisons, without government. We can figure out some other things. We're creative people, you know, so let's figure it out. Let's figure out how to do this. But it's going to come from us being able to sit down and like, hey, what do you think about this? I'm taking up too much in the call.
Sure. You're not taking up too much. I guess I have a couple of things that I was thinking about, and also what Arya was saying. Just like, I think there's like some folks in this room who might be like interested in doing a direct action because they're working on an environmental campaign or even with an anti-deportation letters or whatever. Acknowledging like where these direct action tactics actually came from, and I don't see that happening a lot. And so, especially like coming from an environmental standpoint, is extremely white. Even though Indigenous people, people of color, Black folks have been fighting for the environment for a really long time and have developed these direct action tactics. They utilize them for survival and also for community resiliency. So if you are one of those people in this room who identify as one of those people, maybe start thinking about actually where did these things come from and why am I actually using them and how am I paying homage or respect to those people who are still incarcerated because they utilize these tactics, or people who were incarcerated just for existing during state oppression. So I just like want to say that because I know that is something that I have experienced as a person who teaches people how to utilize direct action. I'm often in a space where there's like folks who just want to utilize the tactic, but don't want to understand the history behind the tactic. And so just also uplifting what Ashanti said too, just like understanding where these things came from. Why did they even exist? Because did they exist just to protect something in your white community because you didn't want it there anymore? And then you kicked it out to a person of color or Black community? That's not why these tactics were invented. And I guess like folks asked me to just talk about social media a little bit. That is something that I personally utilize a lot, not recently, because I, in general, just for transparency, I have a ton of anxiety. I haven't been in a room with this many people since court, so it's like, I'm like, non-existent, like trying to lay low and not be around a lot of people right now. Is just, one, it's a tool that can be overused, and it can be a tool in which people feel that they can communicate without any ramifications, and people can hurt each other really intensely through there, but it is something that is like quote unquote accessible, and it can also be utilized for actions and tactics in that way, and as a way of uplifting work that people are doing on the ground and creating our own media to tell our own
to tell our own story, tell our own narratives, because so often the media wants to take that away from us. And so creating our own platforms, having our own radio stations or radio shows, our own podcasts, I just want to really support folks in doing that work too. I don't really have a lot to say, just
yeah, that's all I want to say, and yeah, I don't know if people have questions.
Just on that social media, I'll get to you in a second. I'm just curious, by a show of hands, can you guys tell me who learned about this event in social media?
I had a
I'm
flyer.
just curious to know what, you know.
Back in the day.
So, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you all for coming. This is wonderful. If you're not a lawyer and people depend on you and you can't do direct action, what can I do in terms of money or time to help support? Not me, but everyone. They can't do that.
So I can start. When we're talking about direct action, I don't mean just the people who are risking arrest. So there are so many roles that are involved that are oftentimes equally, if not more important, in order for people to even get to that point where they're choosing to risk arrest. You know, if we don't have someone who creates the art, we're just standing there. Like, no one knows what we're doing. So why are you there? If we don't have people who are providing emotional support before, during, and after, you know, the trauma that Shanti has brought up, or even I know I personally experienced, which is why I also have really bad anxiety. Not having that support system can be really difficult for a person. Financial support is always helpful to organizations and campaigns. We usually direct people to, if you're interested in anti-deportation work, I suggest people donate to AMOR, or if you want to talk about organizations, Legal Fund. Yeah, if you want to talk about that, I can also talk about specific groups. I would suggest organizing, but there's also groups in this room right now that you could talk to. I know there's like folks from Iowa, you could talk to them. But just want to, there's so many support roles that are necessary. We need people to strategize, we need people to scout, we need people who communicate with the lawyers, because oftentimes, I mean, I like talking to Jim, and I do talk to Jim, but sometimes I don't want to talk to my lawyer, and sometimes I want someone else to liaison between me and my lawyer, right? So if you want to know more about the roles in an action, I suggest going to a direct action training. If you're interested in donating, maybe we can like make a list of organizations back where Ben is, get a sheet of paper, and people could list organizations, and people can look at them, and if people who signed up, we can send out an email of organizations in the city for people to donate to. But don't ever think that you can't be involved in direct action because you can't risk arrest. There's a role for everybody, and if you're in an organization that doesn't want to find a role for you, then you shouldn't be working with them. People should meet you where you're at and acknowledge where you're at too. And also, if on the flip side of that, oftentimes I've been in organizations where people are like, you can't risk arrest because you're undocumented, or you can't risk arrest because you're a person of color, you're a black person. That's not fair. What you can say is, if you are risking arrest and you have these identities, or if you're a trans person, these are the ways in which we can support you and acknowledging what you can and can't do, but don't ever take away someone's autonomy to resist the way that they want to. If they want to do it, they can do it, and it's okay for you to be honest about how you can meet them. Another thing I didn't talk about earlier, too, about the arrest process and just like identity, because I do identify as a genderqueer person, is that the police will determine your gender for you when you are arrested. And so that might mean, and oftentimes this has happened in fan cases because we do have a lot of trans folk who risk arrest with us, they will be held in a facility that is not the one in which they represents the identity that they have that is theirs. And that can also be really damaging and harmful and emotionally harmful. And providing that support afterwards is really immensely important. So I just want to, support roles are so important, and we can't do our work if we don't have them. And, oh yeah, legal observers, which the NLG can get due. This is the thing I've learned though. Sometimes people think that if you plan an action, you put it on Facebook, that the NLG is going to come. You actually have to tell them that it's happening. So you should contact them. I don't know if anybody else, and I know there's lots of questions.
Let us know a couple weeks at a time if you can, because we have to send out an email and ask who's available, and everyone has a schedule. So as soon as you know, contact us.
Oh, if you want to be a legal observer, you can also become one. Yeah, you don't have to be a lawyer. You want? I got trained as a legal observer, but then I was nonchalantly told that maybe it wasn't a good role for me.
So if you want to help, when people reach out to us, the National Lawyers Guild, if they're going to have an action, we will provide legal observers. The way it's supposed to be is that legal observers, you're not talking, you're not part of the action, technically. You're just there to watch what the police do and document, what they do, how many of them are there, who's there, who looks suspicious, and you could potentially be a witness if there are cases. And if someone's arrested, you should be the one, if you're near there, to get all the information about the person who's being arrested. So that's another way you could potentially help support. Just a thought.
You get to wear one of those green cool hats, so. Do you have a question?
Yeah. First I want to shout out that, when it comes to seeing what you can do or even what groups are out there, like when you're saying going out to the community, that's also that. Going to this, and because I think that's how I've met a lot of the groups, is by just going to a lot of events, meeting other people, finding out other groups, and then continuing to just go, to keep showing up. And I know there might be this knee-jerk feeling that I felt too, of man, I wish all the groups in Providence were listed on a website. And I actually was oh man, I didn't even make that happen. And I found out that A, that's not gonna, that's not helpful to groups. They can't, some shouldn't be public. B, it just changes so much. And so as much as you really would an easy, here's what you can do, it really is, you have to just show up. And I've been showing up for, I think maybe 2 years now, and only now have I feel I'm really actually doing the work of helping a community. And so community building, base building is something that's really important. And you have to recognize that you just can't come in and say, I'm here to help. You have to come in, learn, build relationships, because even if you want to be on a direct action support team, they're most likely not going to take you in just because you're there. They need to have a bond, a trust. They need to trust you, because again, this is very security-focused work that needs to be at a high level of importance. But my actual question was, in talking to folks, I'm curious as to the lawyers around. I feel that in work such as law or business, in the education around that, law school, business school, there's a bit of a dehumanizing process, and a sort of teaching you to be a follower of the system. And I'm curious what kind of experiences y'all have with meeting fellow lawyers or people who believe in the system, work in the system, and you trying to, I don't know, help them understand or have a dialogue about core values and why you're doing the work you're doing.
I don't speak to other lawyers about my work. They do. I mean, when you're a lawyer, you're part of the system, and you have certain ethical obligations that you need to meet when you could lose your license to practice, right? So recognizing that, understanding it, and balancing it with your views and wanting to help can be tricky. And I think all of us probably go through that. But generally, when I'm talking to other lawyers, unless I know they're like-minded, I don't even address the subject with them.
After you.
Are you sure? I want to talk about that. It's really hard. Like just yesterday, I think my client went away. He handled it a lot better than I did, and I've been doing this 6 years. But like Allison said, you do have certain obligations. I push it. And you do what you can for your client to the extent of the law, but at the end of the day, for me, it's about that client. And I chose to do the work. I'm a public defender, I'm part of the system. I technically keep the system going, right? But I tell myself deep down, I do this work in the hopes that I won't do this work one day. So I'll just keep, that's brief. Keep going, but.
I just wanted to say one quick thing. The way that I deal with it, just on a personal level, is getting back to what Sherry was saying earlier. Is like Sherry doesn't want to pay restitution. The system wants her to pay restitution. Well, guess what? My client doesn't want to pay restitution. With the system, they're not paying restitution. Like, it's hard to balance like the best interest of your client. Like, none of us want our clients to go to jail. But if that's what the client is willing to risk, then that's what the client is willing to risk. And it's our job to not worry about them going to jail. It's our job to getting them to where they want to go. It's our job to help them find their goal, meet their goal. It's not to keep them out of jail the way many people would like. Yeah, that's most people's goal, or many people's goal. But if that's not their goal, then that's not your job. Your job is to do what your client wants you to do. And that's sort of the way that, on a personal level, that I would balance and being part of the system. And I don't like saying that I'm part of the system, but I am, and the way that many of us up here are, and many of us in this room are.
Yeah, I don't really worry about, I'm very overt even in court with my politics. And I have, yes, I mean, I do have to acknowledge that there's a lot of privilege that allows me to do that. Because as a white cisgender man, I'm sort of at the start already kind of welcomed into sort of like the law as a person who belongs there. So I don't sort of, if I'm overt with my politics, I don't suffer. I don't risk the same sort of like being ostracized in the same way that other folks might. So that's, and I think that's how I try to deal with and cope with what I think is a lot of the stress and guilt of being a part of a system that oppresses people. Because I do want to, I think, acknowledge and echo what other folks have said, which is that as a lawyer, and especially as a defense attorney and as a public defender, you are part of a system that oppresses and punishes people, right? And so, yeah, that's how I deal with a lot of that, and therapy. So I do really want to say that this is to the attorneys here. If you can, find a therapist and go often and take care of yourself. Because you're not going to do a good job of representing people if you are not taking care of yourself in that way.
Everybody got tentacles to this system, whether they were as a lawyer or whatever. People got jobs, people got to go to school, got bills, any of them can make it real difficult for you when you're in a situation where you're arrested and stuff. What you gonna do? All of that stuff has got to be figured out. If you might just get a minor conviction for something and you want to take a trip to Canada, you find out when you get to the border, they don't let you in because you got a conviction. They don't care what it is, And there's other things, those tentacles. Then you have the relationships that you build, you know, that you have responsibilities for too, whether it's family, whether it's comrades, you know, co-workers even. So you got stuff to consider, whatever it is, what you're willing to give up. Sometimes the relationships you build is the things that kind of give you balance. You know, it's kind of against making extreme decisions at the moment that you would regret later. All kind of things happen. So for me, it's not just, you know, the lawyers, you know, yeah, they tied into the system. We all are. We pay taxes and all that stuff, you know. So consider what you do. And as, you know, First Nation say, in all your relationships, consider what you do or what you want to do, you know. And I know it's like what the lawyers are saying too. It's like the lawyers want to honor the activists who they're representing, you know, so that they know that they don't cross that boundary. You know who this person is you're representing. You know, don't do anything that would dishonor that. You know, it becomes very important. And that's the kind of relationships we want in general anyhow. You know, in this new world, we want to eventually win. Right? Okay.
Question here and then there. I'm keeping stack. Because I can see. And then there's a ton everywhere else. These two were
So, a lot of the ways that these things have been discussed, and it sounds like it's focused on the possibility of getting arrested in a protest situation. But that's not the only form of political repression, right? So, for those of you who are lawyers and who are not but have experiences, right? I guess, yes, beginning from the legal perspective, what is your experience, or legal cause, or working in part from a legal spaces around targeted state repression, police repression by FBI, by JTTF, Joint Terrorist Task Force, you know, agencies, things like that. So in other words, if not out of protest and somebody is still facing this shit, you know, how can we better guard ourselves, for example, on that front? Because, you know, I think there's a certain limit in when we're focusing on protest types of situations, because we're not always at a protest. And for middle class people, and for white people, they tend to think of the possibility of getting arrested at a protest. For other people, that's not always the situation. So it's not a matter of supposedly preparing to be arrested at a protest. And just for what it's worth, I really don't think that the point of a protest should be to get arrested.
Thank you.
The point should be to take bold action, accomplish your goals, and lessen the risk of getting arrested, up to and including breaking your friends out of the hands of police. So that is breaking the law. Be ready for that. But that's one thing I'm wondering, and more so to you, Shanti, would you be able to speak at all on the instance where the Panther 21, where some members of the Panther 21 were engaged in organizing in the tombs and in the detention facility where they were being held at, and how that impacted the local prison movement?
I'm not sure if I remember specifics on that at all. I remember when it happened.
So that dynamics of that, where people get arrested and then engage in organizing their groups and what incarcerated that's.
Yeah, I'm not sure I remember all of some of the things I do remember. That from the organizing inside the prisons, I know part of it was educating folks inside, so if they got out, they would come into the ranks of the Black Panther Party. I know that there was a certain point where they organized, and when things started jumping off, they had a little bit of control, and had it to the point where there's some negotiation with the prison board or whoever it was. Sketchy. It's sketchy. It was a long time ago. And then the other thing I remember is that after that, there were some folks that was able to cut through some bars and did a rope ladder and came down and made their way out. So I'm not sure, but if you know more, you might just want to speak on, because it was a long time ago.
Then we have questions at this point.
There was a two-part.
Yeah.
Which is really important.
So, I don't have any direct experience representing folks who have been investigated or targeted by joint terrorism task forces or anything like that. So maybe a couple of things that might be good to remember and keep in mind. Anytime a person is arrested, would that be okay? You never have to. So I know I think maybe Sherry spoke earlier about your right to remain silent. Another really important thing, and maybe even more important, is to cut off police questioning is asking for an attorney. It's probably stronger even than invoking your right to remain silent. So I want to speak to an attorney in response to any police questioning is a really good thing to say. And that might be something we can practice right now a couple of times, right? Maybe because if you practice it, you might find that it helps if you are arrested. So I want to speak to an attorney. I want to speak to an attorney. Once more.
We were discussing this earlier, and it's very easy for us to tell you as lawyers to ask for an attorney and say, I want to speak to you, I do not consent to a search. It's very easy for us to say you need to assert your rights, but it's very difficult in a situation, and I'm sure I can talk more about that too. But I gotta tell you, I know lawyers who talked to the police and knew they shouldn't, and we'd have to represent them later. So it's hard, and some tactic may be, and everyone's different and personalities are different, but just saying, I want to help you, I want to work with you, you don't, right? But if it feels too much pressure to be assertive, you can just take a step back and say, I have a lawyer, I've talked to lawyer friends, they've always told me to call them, I really just want to call them. You can do it in a way that's not necessarily assertive if that feels more comfortable to you. But if you can, always say that. Always say, I need to speak to a lawyer. You don't have to be aggressive about it, or you can be aggressive about it. I mean, you have a right to do it, so either way. But just know that it's hard. And the other thing I want to say is if you're in that situation and you end up answering certain questions or not, don't beat yourself up about it later. Don't do that to yourself, because it's a very difficult situation to be in for anybody, no matter where you are, but particularly for other communities. So, don't beat yourself up later. Don't let your lawyer beat you up either.
I don't know if I'm going to address this, but it just made me think of when certain task forces start attacking certain communities. I think it's important for people, if they're comfortable, whoever was the first victim of that task force, to maybe notify their trusted circles and somehow get the information out. Like for us as attorneys, and maybe this is selfish of me, but we like to keep track, like in New Bedford right now, the feds are coming in hard into the communities of color on these like gang drug task forces and bringing federal charges. And if we can get the information, I think it would help us help our clients, and also just to know what's happening in these communities and being aware, and maybe the communities can be aware and help protect each other. I don't know if that kind of answers. That's kind of what I thought of when you asked this question.
I'm sorry, nobody.
No, this is,
Because I think I want to get back to certain things. Not that I not on the details, but one, when we talk about the Joint Terrorist Task Force, and you can let me know if I'm on. Part of what I think is really important is when you have groups like the Joint Terrorist Task Force that are starting to like identify people, individuals, and organizations and movements because they see certain kinds of threats more so than others. You know, what was happening in the 70s was that they started to put us in the same category as like the mafia. You know, and they was calling us organized crime. You know, and you're talking about this is from Panther Party to the Black Liberation Army. Black Liberation Army clearly was an underground group. We was not following the law unless it took us to an action. And we were very clear about that. So the FBI and the Joint Terrorist Task Force was also very clear about that. But, you know, part of the problem was where did the movements in general stand in relation to what we felt was important for the next level of struggle for us, you know. Because what they was doing to us, they had did to others. They had did during the time of the height of the Communist Party, the Socialist parties, and there was workers' movements all through the South. That was 30s and the 20s, 30s, and 40s that was organized even interracially. And Hoover and all of it, like, knew who to focus on. But the question is, where does it make you stand when you're outside of that? And what we found was that we were being isolated not only by government and the media, but when our communities started to buy into it, then they started to isolate us. And other organizations in the communities started to isolate us. We also became them dangerous people. So when we got captured, we didn't even say arrest. You know, when we got captured, we was political prisoners and prisoners of war. A lot of times in the courtrooms, it was just us and them real, you know, solid supporters, small groups. But the other groups in the communities that we served in different capacities, they wasn't there. And that's very hurting, you know. But like, hey, we're soldiers, we gave our lives to this, we won't take it. And a lot of times we got big sentences, you know. And that's why you got some in there now, 30, 40, 50 years in prison. But governments, they know what they're doing. They know they want to get ahead of stuff. If the environmentalist movement becomes more successful over and over, some of the folks in that movement is going to be like, I think that when that arrest warrant comes, I think I'm going to disappear. I'm hoping that there's some folks in other areas that's going to help me. But I ain't sure, you know. They're doing their job. Ours is to, you know, like when we feel the necessity to move to other levels, then we're going to have some support too. The system is designed to destroy us. If not physically, here, you know, and to shut our mouths so that it doesn't get passed on generation to generation, you know. So that thing was definitely happening then, you know, when we got identified as a certain thing. I mean, it did with the Earth Liberation Movement and the Animal Liberation Movements. If you study it, you see what happens. These are folks that's like, I don't care about the law doesn't serve us, we got to save our lives, we got to save the planet, we got to save people. When you take that kind of step and you really know that you're going to have to step outside the law, break the law, it's good to know that you will have some support. Otherwise, you will be sitting up there in prison, and there ain't going to be but a few family members or a few real solid supporters that you're going to be writing. And you're going to ask yourself, was it worth it? Hopefully you'll say, yeah. You know. But you may not. You may, like, if you should get out, and in your right mind, maybe that's it. You know. And you may not be that person that gets up to encourage others. I feel like me, I'm going to get up and encourage others. I don't care how crazy it is. We ain't going to do this unless we can keep it going. If there's one or two, keep it going. Somehow we got to figure out how to bring this down. You know, but if that doesn't happen, it feels like failure. again, we need to be able to have something else going on with how we are, our being in this world, that will keep our heads and our hearts above water, you know, and hopefully be able to rebuild the kind of relationships that will sustain us to the point of like total victory over this thing, you know. So we got to really figure that stuff out. And there are going to be others that are going to be like underground. Don't necessarily mean always armed, but there's been underground groups that's been nonviolent. But we want to have to figure out how is this going to happen and what are we willing to support. And if we can't support it, can we not stand in the way? Can we not?
So you're just past the note. It says, basically, somebody wants us to talk about other reasons why you shouldn't talk to the police, aside from like, just don't do it. Like, I think people want some reasoning behind that. So when you're talking, when you're brought in for questioning or you're arrested or whatever, I think it's important to first know that distinction. I mean, being just brought in for questioning, or are you actually under arrest and being charged with a crime already? And you can find that out simply by asking, am I just being questioned, or am I under arrest? Or am I free to leave? Like, things like that. Like, and you can generally, what am I being charged with? Just probe a little bit. Don't talk about the actual situation that led you to being brought in. When law enforcement agencies bring you in, as has been described by a bunch of folks here, you're going to be tired, you're going to be hungry, you're going to be stressed, you're going to be anxious, all the things. You can just keep going and going and going. And when you're feeling all of those things, your mind is not working at 100% or 90% or anywhere near where it should be working or could be working. And the problem that will lead you to is that you may say something to a law enforcement officer that may not end up being true, or which, and it's not because you deliberately meant to mislead this person, it's just because you are completely physically, mentally, emotionally drained and exhausted, and you just misremember. And when you tell that to them, they write it down, and they later find out that it's not true. Well, there's your criminal charge. Even if there wasn't another charge prior to that, you now have a charge for misleading the police, obstruction of the police officer, whatever it's called in your jurisdiction. So that's, you know, that's just one more thing to keep in mind. You know, you could talk yourself into a charge. I think it's important to find out what they want to hear from you. But just don't talk to them. They'll twist your words. We've all seen like making a murderer, like things like that. But that stuff is real, and I know it's an Netflix, and I don't want to make a joke or anything like that. But that stuff is real. That stuff happens. Police do that shit, and like, nobody in this room, including the attorneys, are not susceptible to that. Everybody is. Like sitting here right now on a Saturday afternoon where it's nice and we all like got ready and came here, it's easy to sit here and say, oh, I wouldn't find myself in that situation. I don't know that to be true. I don't think anybody in here can actually say that. I think when you're under all these other pressures, law enforcement, uniform, you're in station, you're cold, you're hungry, you're tired, I don't really think many of us know how we're going to react. Some of us do because we've been, or people have been in that situation. But if you haven't been in that situation, I don't think you can sit here and say, oh, I wouldn't find myself in this situation because, you know.
It's important to know that police officers can lie to you. They're allowed to lie to you. The court is upheld when they lie to you. They can lie to you and say, your friend said this, your friend said that, we've got you on camera, we saw you do that. They can lie about all kinds of things, and they're allowed to get away with that. We as attorneys are not allowed to lie, not allowed to speak untruths to the court or to our clients, but police officers can. So when they're talking to you, you need to remember that. So that's one of the tactics they use to get you to answer questions, and they may not have enough or anything on you to arrest you at the time you come into the police station or at the time they approach you wherever you're at. but they gather enough just by questioning you and having you answer those questions. The other thing I wanted to point out is it's also easy for us to say, hey, you need to get a lawyer, you need to call us and tell the police you need to get a lawyer. But the truth is, you need to pay for that lawyer if you're not arrested, and a lot of people don't have money to do that. So that's when you have to use your community groups and your contacts and the NLG to try and find someone, because there are people who will volunteer in that situation, who will step in and try and help you and either go to an interview if it's an FBI agent, if they're at your door, don't answer the door, don't answer the door, don't answer the door, don't talk to the police. But make a phone call, you know, try to get someone on the phone to help you, or say, hey, you know, if they're coming through your door, I'm on the phone with my lawyer. Just some things to know, but it's good to know if you have connections when you're in the communities and passing around that information to people so they know when there's either ICE, FBI, police, state police, local police at your door, what you can do and who you can call.
I feel like a few things in terms of like surveillance, and I personally like have had websites made about me, telling people to kill me. I've had like the sheriff from Bristol County be on the radio and say that people have permission to shoot me. After some of my actions, I've been sexually harassed. I've gotten death threats. I've gotten messages that people should sexually assault me. These are like, this is a reality. And I know we're not talking just like in your answer in regards to doing actions. I just like want to say like that's something that does happen and can be extremely stressful, especially if you don't have a community, you don't have people to support you. But even just like coming into this room, you are all implicating something about yourself, right? And so you all might leave, and some of us will get home okay, and some of us may not. And I just want to acknowledge that, right? Whether it's because of your identity, or maybe you went through a red light or whatever, but like recognizing that that's a reality. When you choose to go to spaces, you are also implicating your interests and your values and your beliefs, and that's scary. I've also been in organizations where they've been infiltrated by the police, who want to pretend like they're activists, who will start personal relationships with activists, who will start personal relationships with community organizers or community members so that they have more access to those organizing spaces. And they'll marry them, they'll have children with them. So that's also a reality. And so knowing your community is the root, like knowing your people is the root of safety. When I say safety in quotation marks, because you know I do believe that safety is a complicated word, but like knowing the root of your community, like these are my people, these are the people I can call, these are the people I can trust, is definitely the root of that. Practicing security culture. Don't just go to Google and search for something. That's not okay. Like you use there's different ways of blocking your VPN so that you can do research. So just even searching things can implicate you. So being really mindful about technology. Don't bring your phone everywhere with you when you're having private conversations. Don't just text what you're going to do. To be honest, like Fang gets a lot of messages on Facebook from people being like, we want to get arrested. And I'll be like, cool, not talking to you about that. Like, don't message people on Facebook, and also agree that not all actions have to end in arrest. And everyone should learn how to de-arrest people. That's just like a fact, just do it. But in general, don't communicate sensitive information. And I'm not even just talking about actions, I'm talking about immigration status of people, I'm talking about identities of people. Don't just put that out there, because it makes them unsafe, and it's not okay. Especially if you don't have consent of people to talk about them or talk about the work that they're doing. So be mindful of technology, be mindful of who your people are, Other things that we've done, or I've done with people, is like have a safe spot, like shit's going down and we're all gonna meet somewhere, or we're gonna meet in different locations because we want to spread out. Just to make sure that people are okay and have a way of checking in with those people if you're worried. Knowing that like people will just get pulled over and detained, and like that's a reality, and especially if you're going to or from meetings, events, and just checking on people to make sure they got home okay. I like to use the example of like going to a party, everyone has a role, like someone's gonna bring the snacks and someone's gonna be the designated driver, and it's just like checking in on everybody who's doing all of these roles for you wherever you're going is really important. Practicing security with your friends is really important. It's something that I've had to do for organizers often, and that can look different. People won't talk about that, but you're not sleeping. You're staying up all night to make sure that that person and their family is safe from the police. You are protecting people from the police, which is really scary because they can kill you. And I've had to do that numerous times, of protecting organizers police have been targeting them, following them, or not even, I'm going to say, just these white supremacists coming and trying to literally kill my friends. So learning how to practice security, learning how to walk around without any lights on, without the sun, learning how to walk in the dark is a very valuable tool. Making sure your eyes can adjust to the dark, because you need to learn how to protect people. This is all scary, but this is what's happening to people right now and has happened in the past. So if you're interested in doing this work, I suggest that you start taking it extremely seriously and understanding that these are the ways that people are trying to protect themselves. So having security shifts, having grab bags of food, burner phones, gift cards, things like that, so that people cash can just go if they need to go, and making sure you know what those networks are if you need to move people to different places, because that is also a reality. I don't know if that like answered your question specifically, but those are things that I know I've witnessed and have had to do for some people. Sorry, it's really hard because it's really
take your time, man.
Yeah, but just like, yeah, so it's still raw, because those are things that are still happening right now for some people. And sometimes that means you have to stop talking to people to keep them safe. And that means you're losing people you care about. And that's definitely real.
Do we have one more question?
I just was passing out some, how many of y'all heard of the CSA Community Safety Act? So there's a new ordinance in Providence that the Providence Police has to go by. It's a new ordinance off the rip, and plus we got a turn review board, community citizens that will oversee, look at what the misconduct of the police are. So there was some pamphlets going on, there's a phone number on that. And I'm going to ask the gentleman from Bristol County, my man with the glasses on, why haven't nobody got rid of that sheriff out there? I've been dumbfounded about that.
Can I speak to that, please? Because we have a group that's been going on for years. We've had it investigated, which took us years to do, and pressure on the governor in person, us going up there. We did have him investigated. He's an elected official. The state, we've met with every single representative in Bristol County. They hate this man. He is not liked. They are trying to get some control by putting things in the budget to like clip his wings. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to like impeach him or anything, and we are fully prepared to support, and we're connected to larger groups too that do support and campaign for candidates. Mm-hmm. And we will go all out for the appropriate candidate. We just need the damn candidate. We are laying the groundwork. If you Google him now, you will get nothing but page after page of negative things. We did that by not realizing we were doing it. We are going to, when he has his big fundraiser in November, we will be there. The police backed us up, they called the police on us, and the policeman came and said, good job, this is what makes America great, and walked off. He's not one like, he runs unopposed. We need a candidate. Please, if anybody has a candidate, we don't have money, but we will fundraise and we will do what we want for them.
Okay, thank you. That's good to know. And my, the last question is that, for Ashanti, when you mentioned the education part with, for us with, showing, letting folks know about the history of the Soledad brothers, that Jonathan Jackson, George Jackson, and folks that even Janet Africa that served 40 years in solitary confinement just got released, right? So the prison system to me is like, it's a warehouse that slowly intertwined with the police, because it happens in 3 segments. You get arrested, you go to court, if you got time over your head, you go to prison, right? And so, I'm kind of like you, I had Fred Hampton Jr. here last year, and Monica Moorhead for Black August explaining, you know, how his dad got, you know, exterminated or assassinated by the FBI and stuff. How can, I mean, wrecking my brain too, like how to bring the community to buy in of the injustice that's been happening for even before I was born, you know, like, and it's still happening today, even with the police and then with the gang database and all that faulty. I want to stop swearing because it gets me so mad, right?
It's real though, it's real though.
Yeah, all this faulty shit, right? And now they just found out that what the city was trying to do was illegal with the running this gang database, right? And Steve Brown from the ACLU had to call them out on it.
If you live in Providence and you do not know what the city say, talk to this man.
Yeah. And so, I'm just like, how can we bring our people to understand that these things, these segments are still happening, and not to let them be left out, and especially the men and women that coming out of the prison system.
I mean, I don't think I can add more than what I shared with the brother here. It's not like I got answers.
Yeah, nobody does.
You know, so for me, the bottom line is, you know, are you willing to get in neighborhoods and actually have dialogue with people about, you know, what's your concerns? And, you know, and if we've lost the skill of having dialogue, then maybe that might be the first place to start.
Yeah.
You know, because dialogue does mean that you're going to be as open to learning from who you're having the dialogue with as you are of sharing all this stuff that you want to share. And it kind of keeps you humble or open, but it gives you a chance to build authentic relationships. Our heroes and sheroes from the past, I mean, it's important that people know about them. You know, but if we just keep holding events at the same places with the same, you know, people are showing up, something we ain't doing right.
That's right.
You know, there's something we're not doing right, so we got to sit down and figure out what else can we do, how creative can we do, and figure out other ways to get out what concerns us. You know, and I mean, I can't say any more on that. If we can't do, you know, those kind of things, then what are we really building, and what are we relying on that ain't really working?
Thank you. I do just want to address the previous question regarding Sheriff Hodgson. Elections are one tactic, right? But a new sheriff doesn't mean the end of the jail or being in prison. So,
but it could mean the end of the deportation thing, because we'll only support, you know, we've got criteria. So, you know, he volunteers for that, and he's a monster. There's no other way to describe it.
Very sad.
Horrible.
no, he's obviously one of the worst, but
He
I do
belongs
just want to
someplace
acknowledge.
supremacist. He's on their board.
I know, I do just want to acknowledge, even if there's no intergovernmental services agreement between Bristol County and the Department of Homeland Security or a KCMG agreement, there are still people in prison and held there charged criminally. So even a new sheriff doesn't end that.
Right. But we're working
We
on.
gotta start somewhere.
I know, I agree.
No, we're working on legislation, we're working on everything, everybody's like, doing everything we can, but at least, yeah, it seems like a no-brainer, we can at least get somebody else.
Maybe one more question?
So when the government's starting labeling these protests,
Oh, are you sorry, where?
This woman's had her hand up for a long time.
Yeah, we can try to, there's two, quick questions we can take possibly.
She's had her hand up the whole time.
Oh, me? Yes. So two really quick things, and then you can ask your question. Number one, thank you so much for the panelists. If I can say anything to you is we see you and we hear you, and thank you. I can only speak to New Bedford, not from Rhode Island. New Bedford, there's a lot of stuff going down right now. At 32 years old, I can tell you that my mentality, what I try to teach my son, is how to prevent fires. And I know organizations, they're like a firefighter role, helping people put out fires. I really would like to know from the panelists, how do we do early intervention? How do we do early access to justice for community members that are undocumented so that their access to justice is not when they're arrested or detained? I can speak from my own experience that I have seen in New Bedford what happens when members of the community get, detained, and it's sad. So what can we do to kind of prevent that from happening?
It's a very hard question.
Okay.
But I want to try to just respond with what I know is happening here. I think before a more, I'm not going to say everyone should just call more. I don't know if COPT is still in this room, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got that.
AMORE is a rapid response network created in Providence because of ICE, and it's a 24-hour hotline. But even and I think COPT should just talk about AMORE because she runs it. But in general, before AMORE, like I keep saying, like community is the root of safety. Like knowing who needs to hear these things, and this actually has been a question that people have asked me so much. And one woman I started working with, we started trying to organize just house meetings in her house with her close friends and their children, and just sitting down and talking about what their safety concerns are regarding status, or if they know of other folks that they might want to start pulling in, but starting small and just being like, what do we have right now? What can we share with each other? Knowledge, resources, food, where can we get resources? Just having a simple, and then bringing more people into that conversation, or finding people who are also already having those conversations and sharing space with them, and then identifying these are the lawyers who can provide these services for us, and contacting the National Lawyers Bill if that's helpful. Contacting them and just being like, if something is to go down, this is who it is, and bringing them in to talk to you all about what that process could look like, what resources they also have to provide, and just having, open dialogue, like Ashanti's saying, having these conversations, because it's you yourself may have this is what my concern is and what my worry is, and someone else might have the exact same thing, but then they also might have another thing on top of that. But you might have the solution to that other thing that's on top of that, and you don't even know that you are a resource and that you have that solution. And so I think what people have been doing for a long time is like Shanti was saying, having these dialogues, having these conversations, laying out what we have, what we need, who might have this, and knowing who does not belong in your community, because it's so, I've been in meetings where someone new would come and I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's a new person, and someone who's been in that community for a long time, like, that's a freaking cop. Like, we need to shut down this meeting now, you know? And so knowing who shouldn't be there is extremely important and helpful. And I know that sounds so basic, but I think that is the core of creating these things of prevention, and learning how to de-arrest people is really important. Learning how to identify the patterns of ICE. Where are the prisons? Where are they patrolling? Which streets are they on the most? The more you know about the people who are harming our communities, the easier it will become for you to start identifying those patterns collectively, but you need to have a core of people who are interested in doing that with you. I don't know if anyone else has any suggestions.
I've got one. Obey every single traffic law there is. Unfortunately, you have to. You can't get away with having a blinker out, having a taillight out, having a loud exhaust, having no inspection sticker, expired registration stickers on the wrong way, speeding a little, not yielding, not coming to a complete stop. Those are all things that put you in front of the law, and having to confront them that make you vulnerable.
One specific thing that Amore does for prevention is they host Know Your Rights work sessions and legal counsel sessions, free legal counsel for undocumented folks about like know your rights as often as they can, and legal counsel. So like contacting the NLG and seeing if you can host a free legal clinic for your community would be a way to help with prevention if the community is armed with knowledge about the justice system and their legal situation.
One final question?
She's been waiting for a while.
This is more of a call out to white folks in the room. There are folks in this community who do anti-racist training. They do training on how to be a white person to support these communities that are under attack, frontline communities. Our role might not be what folks of color's role is, and we build relationships with those communities and those organizations, and then have them say, what help do you need? And so that's available. There's multiple groups doing that. There's Standing Up for Racial Justice. There's ways for folks, for white folks in particular, to learn how to not cause harm, how to be most helpful, find out what the resources that probably you might have more of, whether it's monetary resources or privilege to be in spaces that folks of color cannot be in. Like, there's lots of ways that white folks in particular can learn. So again, it's not that we don't want to build multiracial organizing spaces and community groups, but sometimes there's a use to do some learning before you step into that space.
I'm going to trial soon, and so I just wanted to make a plug for myself before we have to shut this down. Last August I was arrested in a direct action protesting the Bristol County House of Corrections. It's a facility that has a 287G agreement with ICE, which deputizes the sheriff and allows them to have a relationship with ICE so that they can detain people there, even though they're not a detention facility. But they do detain them and then we'll deport them. And I was brutalized by the police in my arrest. I was physically harmed, and my co-defendants were also physically harmed by the police during that action. And I'm the only one left. Other folks took different plea deals, but I'm choosing to go to trial. And We're trying to determine if we're going to change my trial date to early January, but I think one thing that has happened with my action is that people have forgotten about it, and people have forgotten to show up for the folks of color who've been arrested in Bristol County, because I know a lot of white folks have been getting arrested for anti-deportation work, and I really appreciate them and support them. But we're going to jail, we're serving jail time, and a lot of those folks have not, and will not go to jail. And so in our action, 2 people have already served time in jail for protesting ICE, and have experienced harm by the police during that process. So I just want to acknowledge, uplift that. Please just be around in January to come to court with me, because the more people who show up for the trial, the better it is for me, and being visible is really important, and being visible for the people who will have court after me is also really important, and the people who didn't participate in this action, so suggest people start going to court to provide support for other folks too. But just want to make a little plug for myself that please come to court with me. I really hate it. I know other people hate it. Some judges really do not like me and have arrested me in court for contempt of court. So I just want to say that. And if you have questions about that campaign, myself and really are around, I don't know where they went, but they're here. And happy to talk more about it if you're interested in that campaign, Fighting 287G agreements in Massachusetts, even though you might live in Rhode Island, but just the connection is so strong that people are getting arrested here and then getting detained there. And we've had lots of community members from Providence be sent there. So if you want to talk to me about it, please talk to me about it. Sorry.
Last plug, if you're interested in becoming a legal observer, write your name down in the back or send us an email. We'll get you on the list and get you trained and go from there.
Oh, and there's a thing across the street. We don't have the thing across the street anymore.
Well, we're going to try to hang around. There's another event.
We'll be outside.
Yeah, we'll be on the other side.
If you want to ask us more questions.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming down.
One second. I don't see them here, but I do just want to acknowledge the most radical lawyer I know who helps me a lot, Shauna Curley. I don't know. So, I ask them questions all the time on, stuff. And so there is no, I think, for me, doing this work without Shauna, so I just want to acknowledge that.
And Ben Evans.
And Ben Evans. Well, yeah, the guy standing in the back.
That's right.